Have you ever imagined hearing about Jesus, from the mouth of an alien? No, I'm not kidding. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe everything you've learned about God, heaven, prayer, and faith was only part of the truth? What if the churches were hiding something? What if Jesus didn't come to create a religion, but rather to reveal a hidden power within you? I know it sounds absurd, but after that night, I was never the same again. In fact, since I helped that being, that thing lying in the middle of the woods, silent with its dark, sad eyes, I haven't been able to sleep a whole night. It's not insomnia. It's like the whole reality is cracked, And now I see things that were previously hidden. And no, this is not delusion. It's revelation. It all started with a crash in the field. I thought it was a tree, or lightning, but it was a spaceship. Not one of those movies with flashing lights. It seemed alive, like it was breathing. And there he was, hurt, calling for help. I should have run away, but something held me back. It wasn't courage, it was compassion. And when I helped him, he gave me something that changed everything. The truth about Jesus. Do you believe in miracles? In demonstration? In prayer that really works? Because this being, this alien who seemed more human than most people, told me that Jesus didn't teach how to ask. He taught how to create. You pray wrong, Frank, he told me. That's why your prayers never worked. At the time, I was angry. Who was that creature to tell me how I should talk to God? But then he showed me. And what he showed, what I saw with my own eyes, it was as real as the ground you walk on now. Jesus was not teaching submission. He was teaching conscious manifestation of reality. He didn't say, ask and wait. He said, believe that you have already received it. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. This being, this entity. He showed me images, holograms from 2,000 years ago. Jesus teaching, not in temples, but in open fields. Talking about the power of thought, about the energy field that connects everything, about frequency, about intentional creation, about faith as certainty and not as empty hope. And maybe that's why the church has silenced these teachings. Because if you discover that you can access God without needing intermediaries, you become free. And freedom, my friend, is a danger to those who profit from dependence. You still think this is all just a story? So explain to me why, after that meeting, the number 47 started appearing everywhere. In the change at the bakery, on the license plate of the car in front, on the radio, on the energy bill. It's no coincidence, it's proof. Proof that what he taught me, it works. And, Jesus told me things that were never preached from the pulpit. Things that challenge everything you think you know about heaven, sin, prayer, and salvation. And that's why ever since that night I can't sleep anymore, because when you see, you can no longer unsee. But before I tell you what Jesus really said to me, you need to understand what I saw, what we hide from ourselves. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you now. And if what I'm saying is right, then maybe you're not here by chance. Maybe this story found you the same way it found me that night, because deep down you've felt that too, haven't you? This feeling that there is something hidden, that what they told you about Jesus doesn't match what you feel inside your chest. As if there were a truth whispering softly behind the official words. For now, that truth is beginning to scream. And if any part of you felt that, even for a second, comment below. Tell me, have you ever had a strange dream? Have you ever seen signs repeating themselves? Have you ever questioned the things you were taught about God? This space here is not for judgment. It's to wake up, to exchange experiences, for us to remember what we were taught to forget. And if this video touched something in you, if some part of your soul trembled with what you've heard so far, leave your like. It's not about ego. It's by frequency. When you like something, you send a signal. You say, this resonated with me, I want more. And if you haven't signed up yet, sign up now, because this is not just another video. It is the beginning of a sequence of revelations that will challenge every layer of your belief. You can choose to go back to your routine as if nothing had happened. Or you can continue with me step by step, revelation by revelation, until you understand what Jesus really said. And when you understand truly, you will realize that you will never pray the same way again. You will never live the same way again. Now take a deep breath and prepares. Because what comes next? It's the part that touched me the most. The part that made my heart stop. The part where he showed me Jesus. Not as an icon, but as a mirror. I know this sounds like heresy. I thought so myself at first. I was taught from a young age that he was up there, far away, untouchable, that I was a sinner, that I had to deserve it, that perhaps one day he would look upon me with mercy, if I were obedient enough, if I humbled myself enough. But what that being showed me, with his dark eyes and his voice inside my head, was no altered Jesus. He was a man full of light, but still a man. Someone who accessed something we all have but forget. And that was when my breakdown began. Have you ever felt cheated by life? I have. And there in that workshop, smelling of grease and rust, lit by a dim blue light leaking from the ship, I realized that perhaps I had spent 62 years praying the wrong way, thinking the wrong way, living ... like a victim. I spent so much time praying for things that never came, begging God to fix my life while everything around me was falling apart. Family, money, health, purpose. I slowly lost everything. And I always thought it was a test, punishment, divine will. But that being, that creature from another world, told me it wasn't punishment, it was a reflex. He looked at me, or rather felt me, and spoke with frightening calm. You're manifesting all of this, even without knowing it. And that cut me open. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him it was unfair, that no one taught me how to do it differently. But he just showed me. First with images, then with energy. You know, when you feel something you can't explain, as if suddenly everything made sense and at the same time nothing did. It was like that. He took me deep inside myself, and he showed me the first prayer Jesus ever prayed, and how completely different it was from ours. It wasn't supplication. It was gratitude. It wasn't despair. It was certainty. He showed me a scene, so real it brought a cold sweat to my face. Jesus knelt, eyes closed, breathing slowly. He wasn't asking for anything. He simply said, "Thank you." He thanked me before the miracle, before seeing, before touching, before anything physical happened, as if it had already happened. And it was at that moment that I understood what he meant. Faith isn't waiting. It's declaring. Prayer isn't begging. It's decreeing. A miracle isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a consequence of frequency. But that's not what they teach in churches, is it? On the contrary, they teach us to doubt, to depend, to feel small, weak, and sinful, as if our role were simply to kneel and accept. But Jesus ... was the opposite of that. He said, "You are God's." He said, "Whatever you ask, believe that you have received it." He said, "The kingdom is within you." But no one explained it to us properly. No one said that believing you've already received is literally feeling as if it were already real, vibrating at that frequency, breathing as if it were true, and letting the physical world follow suit. The alien, yes, I know how absurd this sounds, explained to me that thoughts are like seeds, emotions like water, and that every time I prayed, I don't have it. I need it. Please give it to me. What I was doing was sowing scarcity and watering it with desperation. And the harvest was always more lack, more want, more pain. I could hardly breathe when I realized the magnitude of the truth in that. They were decades of manifesting failure. Without knowing it, I started crying right there, screwdriver still in hand, kneeling beside the ship. Not from sadness, from anger, from regret, from relief. It was there that he gave me the crystal, a small object that seemed alive. And he said, "Choose something small, manifest it, prove it to yourself." And I chose. A number, 47. Don't ask me why. It was the number my ex-wife said was her lucky number, and I hadn't seen that number anywhere in years. But that day, I saw it on the trunk sticker, in the grocery checkout line, in the change, on the receipt, on the license plate of the car in front, 5 times, in less than 6 hours. And I hadn't asked. I had done it the way he taught. I had thanked him as if I had already seen it. I had felt it. I really did. In that instant, everything changed. Not because a number appeared, but because reality responded. And if you answered that, you could answer more. Health, connection, peace. But along with this awakening ... came fear. Because if I created all of this even without knowing it, what else could I have created? That's when he took me even deeper. He showed me scenes from my life as if they were archives. Moments of anger, of abandonment, of failure, all with the same pattern. Thoughts of indignation, of unworthiness, of loneliness. Everything vibrating low. Everything echoing in the universe. Everything coming back to me. And at that point, I almost gave up. It was too much information, too much guilt, too much pain. But he was clear. If you created this, you can also undo it. You can create the opposite. And it was at that moment, with the ship ready to depart, that he showed me Jesus. Again. But this time, up close. Not as a teacher, but as a reflection. Jesus said, "I am the way." But no one understood that the path was not to worship him. It was to follow him. Watch your thoughts like someone watching a door. Decree the desired reality like someone who has already received it. And maintain certainty, even when nothing seems to change. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Some days are easy, others not so much, but something has shifted inside me. A flame, a memory. And if you've made it this far, if you're listening to this with your heart beating differently, then maybe You're starting to remember too. Maybe this video is your 47, your first sign, your first manifestation of a new reality arriving. And now I want to know, have you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever had a dream about Jesus? Have you ever felt like he was saying something that no one else was hearing? Tell me in the comments. But really comment like someone who's taking a secret off their chest. Just write, I remember. Or, that touched me. Or even, I also saw the number 47. Every comment here creates a current of energy, and that current spreads. Comment, leave your signal. Leave a like if this story spoke to you. And if you want to walk along on this journey of revelations, sign up, because what comes next is what really shook everything up. This is the part where he shows me not with words, but with pictures, what Jesus did in secret, and that you've never heard anywhere. It was there at that moment when the sky was beginning to lighten, with the pale light of dawn filtering through the cracks in the shed, that he told me I hadn't seen anything yet, that what he'd shown me so far, the number 47, the manifestation, Jesus's distorted words, was just the surface, the tip of the iceberg, the introduction. And then he asked me something simple, yet profound. Are you ready to see what Jesus did? When no one was looking, I didn't answer right away. I just nodded as if to say yes, but inside a part of me trembled, because something told me that after that, I would never be able to go back. I would never again be able to pretend I didn't know. That I didn't see, that I didn't feel. He approached the ship, ran his hand over a hidden panel, and the metal structure, which until then had seemed solid, began to vibrate as if made of water and light. I don't know how to describe it. It was as if the air had gained density, as if reality were bending within. And in the center of the warehouse, an image appeared. It wasn't video. It wasn't an ordinary hologram. It was different. It was like a living memory. At first I saw only a field. Barren, rocky, with a few twisted trees. And in the middle of that place, him. Jesus. No heavenly light, no halo. Just a man. Simple. Barefoot. Wearing a light-colored robe. But there was something in his eyes. A gleam that was not of this world. He didn't speak. He didn't move much. He just walked slowly. He touched the ground with his hands. He picked up small stones. He watched the birds. And then he sat down alone. There, in that silent place. And he began to breathe. Slowly. Deeply. As if he were entering another state. The creature explained to me. This is how he reconnected. Jesus, alone, in silence, did something no doctrine taught me. He didn't ask. He didn't cry. He felt. He felt as if he already had. As if he already was. As if the world around him was already full. It was pure gratitude. And more than that, it was certainty vibrating throughout his entire body. The creature then pointed to the energy field surrounding his body, a kind of golden light that pulsed, expanded, and aligned with everything around it. He explained, this is the Christ field, consciousness in its purest form. This is what you call a miracle. But in reality, it's vibrational science. In that moment, I saw with my own eyes what happens when faith aligns with feeling. A man arrived staggering, limping, his skin gray, his eyes downcast, and Jesus said nothing. He just looked at him and felt, not pity, but pity, replacing pain. The field of light around him expanded, and touched the sick man. Not physically, energetically. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, the man straightened. He took a deep breath and began to walk normally. There was no shout, there was no spectacle, only presence, only vibrating faith. And the creature said to me, this is the secret they kept from you. Jesus didn't perform miracles to prove who he was. He manifested healing because he saw the healing before it existed, because he felt gratitude before seeing the result, because he never doubted. At that moment, a realization dawned on me. How many times had I prayed in fear, doubt, and despair? How many times was my prayer actually a cry for help? And then I understood. Every thought filled with fear is a decree. Every emotion filled with despair is a seed. What I saw in that moment, in that impossible image projected onto the shed, wasn't just Jesus's teacher. It was Jesus's mirror. And that moved me in a way nothing else had. The creature changed the scene. Now Jesus stood before a small group. His disciples. They were confused. One of them asked, Master, why aren't our prayers answered like yours? And he smiled, not with superiority, but with compassion. And then he said, because you ask as one who doubts, and I give thanks as one who has already received. Silence. No one responded. They just listened. And he continued, it's not the speaking that brings the miracle. It's the internal state. It's the frequency. When you truly believe, the universe bends. When you doubt, it stops. At that moment, the creature froze. He looked at me with those dark, deep eyes, and he said, "That's why your prayers weren't working. It wasn't a lack of faith. It was excessive doubt." That hurt me, because it was true. I remembered all the times I prayed for my health to improve, for my loneliness to end, for my life to have meaning. But deep down, I already knew nothing would change. I already saw myself as sick, alone, lost. And now I understand. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are. The image moved again, and Jesus was now near a fig tree. He touched it and said something. The tree withered. I knew this story, but I never understood why. Then he explained to his disciples, "If you have faith and do not doubt in your hearts, you will say to this mountain, 'Be removed and thrown into the sea,' and it will be done." He didn't say to ask God to move the mountain. He said we would tell him. We would decree it. And that was the whole point. Jesus wasn't telling us to depend. He was teaching us to co-create. The creature turned off the projection. The warehouse went dark for a moment. Only the sound of my breathing. And then he said, "Now do you understand why they hid this?" I didn't answer. I just felt, because, yes, I understood. If everyone knew that the power to manifest their own reality lies within, there would be no more dependence. There would be no more fear. There would be no more control. And the world as we know it ... would crumble. The being walked over to me, handed me another crystal, larger, more intense, pulsing like a heart. He said, "This one amplifies certainty. Use it when your faith wavers." I held on, and I promised right then and there that I would never pray like that again. I would never again say, "Please give it to me," but rather, "Thank you, because it is already." And now, if you've made it this far, tell me, does this make sense to you? Have you ever felt like your prayer was empty? That your words bounced off the ceiling and bounced back? Have you ever tried praying differently? Feeling before seeing? Thanking before having? Tell me in the comments. But comment from the heart. Say, "I feel it before I see it," or "Now I get it," or just gratitude for the truth. Every word you write here reverberates and activates the field and strengthens what we're building together. If this video spoke to something deep within you, leave a like. It's not about the number, it's about the connection. And if you want to continue with me, ... subscribe, because what he showed me after that, it wasn't just about Jesus, it was about what is about to happen to all of humanity. I remember the exact sensation I felt in that moment, a shiver that didn't come from the cold. It came from within, as if something inside me was being rearranged, repositioned, as if the pieces of my soul were returning to their proper places. The crystal he placed in my hand felt alive. It pulsed with a frequency I'd never felt before. It wasn't physical. It was something else, as if made of condensed truth. And I knew instinctively that from that moment on, my every thought would begin to carry weight, that every word would carry a charge I'd previously ignored. But I still didn't understand the reason for all this. Why me? Why now? Why had this been chosen to share this with me, an old mechanic lost in the Montana backwoods, full of regrets, empty prayers, and wasted years? And he, as if he'd heard my thoughts, or maybe he had answered before I could ask. You haven't noticed yet, but it's happening all over the planet. Little by little, in isolated spots, with unlikely people, simple people, broken people, because they are the ones who carry the frequency of humility and openness. He walked to the center of the warehouse and activated the ship again. A new image appeared. No longer Jesus, but now ... the world. Entire cities, fields, mountains, deserts, and in all these places small lights. Some dim, others intense. Points of energy, people awakening. People dreaming of what they never dared believe. People like me ... and maybe like you. These lights are consciousnesses in transition, he explained. They are humans who have begun to feel something different, who have begun to question, to search. People who no longer accept ready-made explanations, who look at the sky at night and sense something there, who pray in silence and feel that the answer comes not from outside, but from within. That struck a chord with me, because I've always been a skeptic. I've always needed to see it to believe it, and now I was seeing it. And even then I still found it hard to believe, he continued. The planetary transition has already begun. It's not an external event, it's internal. It's a frequency shift, a new spiritual era. But many will resist, because fear is still strong. And that's when he showed me what shook me the most that night. The scene changed again, this time an ancient temple. I couldn't tell where, but it was dark, rich, full of religious symbols, men in robes, open Bibles, deep voices, rehearsed phrases. But the energy was heavy, hot, and he told me not everyone who speaks in the name of God is in alignment with Source. It was a punch in the gut, because I grew up trusting, believing that whoever was up there in the pulpit carried the truth. And now I was faced with a revelation that said the opposite, that said that many who clothe themselves in faith live in the frequency of domination, of guilt, of fear. He showed me how the name of Jesus has been used over the centuries to control, impose, and punish. How they distorted the original teachings, how they transformed freedom into penance, how they turned what was meant to empower into something that weakens. And again, he showed me the image of Jesus, but this time he was silent, looking directly at me. And it was as if he were saying, I never asked to be worshipped. I asked to be followed. In that moment, I cried. I cried with regret, gratitude, shame, relief. It was all at once, because all my life I'd asked and asked and asked, and I never imagined that maybe I was the answer I was waiting for. The creature then approached me and said that although much had been hidden, sacred truths remained, including in the Bible itself, for those who had eyes to see and ears to hear. He quoted one of the verses I knew well, when two or more are gathered in my name, there I am. But he said the true meaning of that phrase had been misunderstood. Name, he said, is not a word. It is a frequency. When two or more consciousnesses align on the same frequency of love, gratitude, and certainty, there the Christ presence manifests. I was speechless, trying to absorb it, and then he gave me an exercise. Before you go to sleep, he said, close your eyes. Feel as if you already have what you desire. Don't imagine, feel. Gratitude, certainty, no requests, no doubt. Just a thank you. Do this for 7 days, then observe the world around you. It will begin to change. I promised I would, even though I didn't understand everything yet. Because at that point, what I wanted most was to feel that state again. That inner warmth, that peace that doesn't come from outside. That feeling that finally, I was on the right path. And now, as you listen to this, perhaps something inside you is also stirring. Perhaps you too have felt that spiritual emptiness for so long, and now some dormant part is beginning to awaken. I need to tell you, this is no coincidence. None of this is. If you're here listening to this story, it's because part of you already knew, you already remembered. Even if it was deep down, where only silence touches. And so I ask you one thing now, from heart to heart. If any part of this story touched you, tell me in the comments. But it's like talking soul to soul. You can just write, I feel, or I woke up, or perhaps. Now I understand what he meant. And if you've ever had strange dreams, if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night with your heart racing without knowing why, if you've ever seen repetitions, patterns, signs, talk to me below. This space is safe, it is sacred, it's ours. And if all this resonated with you, leave a like. This gesture, as simple as it may seem, is like an anchor. It says, this message has value. And the algorithm, this blind code, spreads this to more people who need to remember it too. And if you want to continue walking with me through these revelations, and there's still much more to come, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. It's not about followers. It's about tuning. Because what he showed me after that, it wasn't just about Jesus. It was about what is hidden inside all of us. I thought that after all that, after seeing what I saw, feeling what I felt, learning what I learned, nothing could surprise me anymore. I thought the last layer had been peeled away, that the last truth had been revealed. But what that being showed me next was something that, to this day, echoes within me like an eternal whisper. A truth so deep, so hidden, that it's difficult even to put into words. And perhaps that's why he showed me, not just told me. Because certain revelations don't enter the mind. They penetrate, they invade the body, the soul, the blood. They burn silently. He called me back to the ship that last night. The sky was clear. The stars seemed closer, brighter. And there was a tension in the air. It wasn't fear. It was something like a premonition. As if something was about to be broken inside me once and for all. What you're about to see, he said, is what Jesus knew about you. About humans. About who you really are. About what you yourselves had forgotten. And that's why you're always asleep. The ship vibrated silently. A new field was activated, but this time it wasn't the past. It was the interior. Not my body, but my essence. It was as if it were projecting me into myself. As if it were taking me on a journey through who I truly was. Not my name, not my profession, not my traumas, but my spark. I saw light. A living, vibrant light. And in its center, a point of consciousness. Me. But not the me that speaks, that doubts, that feels fear. It was a much older me, much wiser. And that light spoke without sound. It communicated by vibration, by direct impression. And that's when I understood that every human being is a manifestation of the source. That the spark of God that we were sent to seek out there, never left within. The creature explained to me, Jesus accessed this all the time. He operated from this frequency. He remembered who he was. That's why things happened around him. He wasn't chosen. He was awakened, and you, all of you, carried the same potential. I was shaking inside because it was too big. It was too beautiful. It was too much responsibility. And then he went deeper. You think you have a body, but the body is just a tool. What you are is consciousness. And consciousness creates, always. Then I saw images from my memories, small moments I no longer remembered, quick thoughts, fleeting emotions which I believed meant nothing. And soon after I saw scenes that followed months later, years later, and I understood the connection. I saw how a thought of rejection, however innocent it seemed, ended up creating more situations of abandonment. I saw how a moment of devaluation attracted toxic relationships, suffocating jobs, silent illnesses. It was all a demonstration, even when I didn't realize it, especially when I didn't realize it, and that took me apart. But if that's true, I asked, then every bad thing that's happened to me, I created it? The creature was silent for a moment. Then he said, not by intention, but by ignorance. Ignorance generates low frequency. Low frequency generates dense reality. That hurt, because it was admitting that I was the creator of my prison. But then he added, and if you created all this while you were asleep, imagine what you can create now, awake. It was like a punch and a hug at the same time, a fall and a rise. And then he showed me for the last time that night the figure of Jesus, but now no longer in visions of the past, no longer walking through arid fields or touching the sick. Now Jesus was on a plane of light, without time, without space. And he spoke directly to that light within me, not with words, but with pure understanding. And what he conveyed in that moment, I will never forget. It was like this: you did not come to be a servant. You came to be a living reminder of the Creator. You did not come to ask. You came to affirm. You did not come to expect salvation. You came to manifest redemption. The words vibrated inside me like thunder, and I cried again, because it was true. I felt it. The creature then turned everything off. The image disappeared. The warehouse fell silent, and he just said, now you know. And knowing makes you responsible. It was at that moment that I felt truly afraid, not of that being, not of the ship, but of myself, because for the first time in my life, I had no more excuses. And perhaps that's the greatest challenge of awakening. It's not just seeing, it's accepting that you can, because power comes with responsibility, and responsibility demands presence. And most people prefer to stay asleep, because in sleep they can blame God, the government, the devil, karma, life. In sleep there is no accountability. But there is also no creation, only repetition. I left the shed that night, my eyes burning. The sky was still there. The stars still shone, but everything had changed, because now I was no longer a victim of chance. Now I was conscious. What about you? Are you ready for this? Can you look at your life and see where your thoughts, your emotions, your frequency may have created what you have been experiencing? Can you imagine what would happen if you changed that? What if instead of praying, asking, you started praying, decreeing? What if instead of thinking I can't do it, you said this is already mine? Tell me in the comments, but open your heart. Just write, I am a creator, or I manifest, or simply, now I know. These words are not just comments, they are codes. They vibrate, they activate. And if this video sparks something inside you, a memory, a longing, a forgotten truth, please leave a like. This isn't about numbers, it's about energy. It's about signaling to the universe that you're ready for more. And if you want to continue with me on this journey, subscribe to the channel. There's so much more coming. Things you never imagined. Because, as he said, what is hidden inside us, ... It's what will change everything. The next morning, something inside me was different. Not on the outside, my body was the same, my house the same, the world outside hadn't changed, but there was a new vibrancy to everything. It was as if the air was denser, yet lighter at the same time. Fuller, as if for a moment I could truly feel life, as if things had a soul. The wind blowing through the kitchen window seemed to carry messages. The smell of coffee had more depth, and even the sound of the kettle whistling made me close my eyes for a few seconds, as if my heart were tuning into something greater. I wasn't sure how to explain it, but I knew I was beginning to live in another state of consciousness. Another dimension, even though I was in the same place as always. It was as if I had crossed an invisible threshold. And after everything the being showed me, after everything I saw, felt, heard, I could no longer pretend I didn't know. I could no longer return to that old me, stuck on autopilot, lamenting life, praying in fear, hoping for miracles that never came. I now knew that the miracle ... was me. And this realization tore me apart. In a good way, but scary. Because knowing that you are the creator of your reality is like holding a very old key that opens all doors, but with it comes the weight of choice. Will you actually open these doors? Or will you continue to pretend they don't even exist? As I stared out at the shed, the door ajar and the ship still resting inside like a secret known only to me, something inside me told me this wasn't just some extraordinary story that had happened to me. This was a calling, and it wasn't just for me. It was for everyone, but not everyone was ready to listen. And that's why that very day I received a visit from Pastor Williams, a man I'd known for over 30 years. He'd baptized me, held my hand at my mother's funeral, and prayed with me after my divorce. A man who carried good intentions, but also a huge burden on his shoulders, the weight of tradition. He arrived with his car dusty as always. He got out, cradling the Bible in his arm, walking with measured steps as if treading unfamiliar territory. And when he saw me sitting there on the porch, my eyes as still as ever, he hesitated. "Frank," he said after a brief silence, "I heard you haven't been coming to church. Is everything okay?" I smiled. Not mockingly, but out of compassion. It was the same question he'd asked so many times in the past. But this time, I was different. "It's all right, Pastor. Better than ever, actually." He looked confused, suspicious. He looked toward the shed, perhaps trying to understand what had changed there, or perhaps trying to sense what had changed in me. "We miss you. The community misses you." "I felt it too," I replied, "but not in the way you imagine. I miss something more, something I never found within those four walls." The pastor sat down next to me. He rested his Bible on his knees. We were silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "And what did you find, Frank?" I took a deep breath. I couldn't explain everything. I couldn't say I saw Jesus projected by a being from another galaxy, and I understood that prayer. "As you teach, it is all wrong." No, he wouldn't stand for that. Not yet. So I chose the words that vibrated, that resonated. "I found God, but not out there, not in heaven, in here." He frowned. "That's dangerous, Frank. This idea that God is within can lead people away from the truth." "But what if that's true?" I asked calmly. "What if Jesus meant exactly that when he said the kingdom is within you? What if he wasn't trying to make us dependent, but reminding us of our power?" He turned his face slowly. He looked at me as if I were committing blasphemy. But I also saw the fear in his eyes, because deep down he knew. Maybe he'd felt it at some point and chosen to ignore it. "Be careful with those words, Frank. They could lead you away from salvation." "Or it could be salvation," the silence returned, this time heavier. Then he stood up. "I will pray for you. Do that. But pray differently. Pray with gratitude as if I were already saved. Because maybe ... I already am." He walked down the porch steps in silence. He didn't say anything else. But I knew that conversation would still resonate with him. And it was at that moment that I realized, true confrontation with authority doesn't happen with shouting or provocation. It happens with presence, with truth, with vibration. Presence destabilizes, truth disturbs, vibration transforms. That night I didn't go to the shed. I stayed in my room. I took the crystal and sat on my bed. I closed my eyes. I remembered everything I had learned, and I began to feel gratitude for the health I didn't yet have, for the love I didn't yet know, for the peace that was coming. Gratitude as if it already was, as if it were already here. My mind at first resisted. It tried to sabotage me. "You're faking it. This isn't real. You're deluding yourself." But I kept going, because now I knew it was my frequency that shaped reality, not the other way around. After a few minutes, a warmth came over my chest. The same warmth I'd felt in the ship's presence. That same expansion. As I understood, I was accessing the field. Jesus did this naturally. I was just learning. But it was the same place. It's the same energy. I opened my eyes, and on the clock, there it was again, 4:47 a.m. I smiled. Not because it was a coincidence, but because I expected it. Because the manifestation was becoming constant, real. And now I want to ask you, have you ever felt something similar? Have you ever had that feeling that there is something inside you wanting to awaken? Have you ever noticed synchronicities, repeating numbers, people appearing with messages you needed to hear? If so, tell me in the comments. But comment with your heart, with truth. He writes, "I've felt that." Or, "I also see signs." Or if you like, just, "I am waking up." These comments aren't just lyrics. They're statements, vibrations, signs that consciousness is moving. And if this video touched you deeply, leave a like. This strengthens the field. This spreads the message. And if you want to continue this journey with me, subscribe to the channel. Because what happened after that dawn was even stronger. The being showed me the last gift. And with it, a choice. At morning, something opened inside me. Something I couldn't name. It was like a membrane that had ruptured between the visible and the invisible, between what is matter and what is vibration. It was no longer about the ship. It was no longer about being. It was not about the past. It was about the now, about what was yet to come. I felt it with my entire body. And when I returned to the warehouse, I felt something had changed there too. The ship seemed more alive, as if it had absorbed the energy of that moment with me. But it wasn't the ship that caught my attention. It was the being. He stood in the same place as always, but something about his form was different. The light around his body had changed. It was now warmer, more golden. And his gaze, once neutral, now held tenderness. Yes, tenderness. Something almost human, but not in the sentimental sense. It was as if he were seeing not only what I was, but what I could become. "You've made it this far," he said, mouth still. "Now it's time for the final gift." Those words froze me, because I knew deep down that this wasn't just any gift. It was a portal, a choice. And like everything in the universe, choices have weight, frequency, consequence. He walked over to the ship and once again opened a compartment I'd never noticed before. From inside, he removed a small, dark crystal sphere. It seemed ordinary at first glance, but when he brought it closer to me, I saw something inside. A pulsing light, faint, but alive. And this light responded to my presence, as if it recognized me. This sphere contains the remnants of an ancient technology, a living consciousness, encoded by civilizations that once walked with the ascended masters. It was used in ancient temples, before religions as you know them were created, before fear replaced frequency, before worship killed memory. I couldn't take my eyes off that light. It was small, but it seemed to contain the entire universe. It was like looking at a memory I never had, but that had always existed, as if it had once belonged to me in another life, on another plane, in another version of myself. This technology is not activated by touch, nor by command. It is activated by alignment, by your purest vibration. It responds to your truth, not your words. He held out the sphere to me, and I hesitated, because part of me still doubted that I was ready. Part of me still carried the old fear of failing, of not being worthy, of not understanding enough. But then he said, "Remember what Jesus said. Go, your faith has healed you." It wasn't about deserving it. It was about recognizing it. And in that instant, something inside me gave in. I reached out and touched the sphere. And the moment my skin touched its surface, a wave of energy coursed through me. Not like a shock, but like a heat that expanded in circles, pulsing in sync with what I felt. The light within the sphere glowed brighter, and then it all disappeared. The warehouse disappeared. The being disappeared. The ship, the ground, the air. Everything was replaced by a white void. No roof, no ground, only vibration, only consciousness. And in that space I saw myself. But not this me with the scarred face, the calloused hands, the accumulated pain. I saw the original me, the essence, the source. A presence that vibrated like a calm sun, that knew everything, that feared nothing. And it was this I who showed me something that changed everything. A timeline, several actually. Paths I could have taken, versions of myself I chose to forget, lives I abandoned, gifts I buried, and also what was yet to come if I kept vibrating at that new frequency. I saw people reaching out to me, lives being touched not by my words but by my presence. I saw healings happening just by looking at them. I saw children looking at me as if recognizing an older sibling. I saw elderly people touching me and saying, "Now I understand." I saw families coming together, people crying, portals opening. And at the center of it all, a collective consciousness rising. And there, in that space where time does not exist, I heard a voice. The same voice as always, but this time clearer. It was Jesus, but not as a character, not as a symbol, as a frequency. And he said, "You are the second coming." Those words were etched in me like fire and stone. He wasn't coming back as a body, he was returning as consciousness. And this awareness is being born within each one who awakens, each one who remembers. Each one who dares to vibrate outside of fear, outside of guilt, outside of penance. I returned to the warehouse, my eyes burning. I fell to my knees, but not out of guilt, out of reverence. Because now I understood the mission was never to wait for a savior. It was to activate the savior within us. The being approached again, and for the first time he placed his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Now you carry the seed. But it only blooms if you plant it." I knew what he meant. There would be no point in having lived through all that ... if I went back to my routine as if nothing had happened, if I kept quiet, if I kept everything to myself. And that's why I'm here, recording this for you, not as a master, not as a chosen one, but as someone who finally understands that the veil has been torn, and that whoever continues to pretend they don't see ... will remain trapped in the old world. Now I want to hear from you. What does this awaken inside you? Have you ever felt like there is something waiting to be born inside you? Have you ever noticed that some of your choices created realities that seemed like punishments, but were actually reflections of your vibration? Have you ever dreamed that you were somewhere else with other people listening to teachings that no one has ever taught you here? Comment, but comment with presence. Right, I am the seed, or Jesus lives in me, or perhaps the second coming begins with me. These phrases aren't just words, they're vibrational statements. They're codes. They're anchors. If this resonated with you, leave a like. This sends a signal. It shows the algorithm in the universe that you want to keep receiving, that you want more. And if you want to continue this journey, sign up. There's more to come. Because after this gift, the being showed me something that still gives me goosebumps just remembering it. He took me to see what happens after death. And he said he would show me what happens after death. My body reacted before my mind even understood. A chill ran down my spine. My hands sweated. No matter how many profound truths I had heard, no matter how much I had felt the field vibrate within me, no matter how much I had understood that we are consciousness, not flesh, there was still hidden in the oldest corners of my being the old fear. It's the ingrained idea of end, of judgment, of disappearance. The being noticed. He didn't judge. He just looked at me patiently, like someone who had seen that same fear on thousands of other faces. It's not about the end, Frank, he said with his mind, not with his mouth. It's transition, like taking off old clothes and entering another reality. The ship lit up, but differently than before. Instead of images or projections, there was a portal, a kind of vortex made of liquid light slowly rotating. It was silent but pulsating, like a dimensional heart. He guided me there. He asked me to stand firm, and he said, "You won't die, but you will see what it's like to cross over. You will feel what the soul feels. You will remember what was erased." And before I could hesitate, ... everything went dark. But it wasn't dark like absence. It was dark like a womb, a place where everything is still being formed, a void full of potential, a silence that speaks. There, floating, weightless, timeless, nameless, I began to feel. First, the absence of my body. I no longer felt pain. No weight, no limits. I was pure, formless presence. And as frightening as it may seem, it was the opposite. It was liberating, a lightness that no words can convey. Then memories began to emerge, but not ordinary memories. They were sensations, ancient knowledge, recognitions. I saw other lives, other versions of myself, some beautiful, others sad. In one, I was a healing woman. In another, a desert man. In another, a boy who died young but left a message written on the wall of an orphanage that changed another child's life. Everything connected, everything pulsating within me. And that's when the hardest part came, the review. Not an external judgment, no throne, no holy book listing your sins. The truth is, no one judges us. We are the ones who review. We are the ones who feel every action, every word, every omission, but not from our own perspective. We feel from the perspective of others, as if the soul needed to understand the impact it caused. I felt the pain I caused when I remained silent in the face of my ex-wife's sadness. I felt my father's loneliness when I stopped visiting him. I felt the genuine joy of a stranger when I smiled at him on the street, unaware that it was the only smile he'd received that week. I felt it all. And then something even more profound happened. I saw a council, not as judges, but as guides, beings of light, higher than they are, but not frightening. They were calm, they were pure peace, and among them was he, yes, Jesus, not as a religion, not as a prophet, but as a loving, present, immense consciousness. He didn't speak, but he looked at me, and that look tore through every layer of my being, because in that moment I knew he knew everything, every fear, every mistake, every lie, every attempt, and yet ... he loved, not with the conditioned love we learned here, but with a love that doesn't depend on anything, a love that just is. And it was this love that healed me because he didn't demand anything. He didn't ask me to prove myself worthy. He just reminded me. He reminded me of who I was before the fear, before the guilt, before the pain. He came closer. He touched my chest, and I heard inside me, "You were always light, but you chose to forget so you could truly remember." And in that instant, everything shone. Everything turned to light, as if I had become the sun itself. I was everyone. I was one. I was everything, and then I returned. I woke up lying on the warehouse floor, the being beside me, the sphere still pulsating in my hands. Now you see, he said. Now you know that death is just a passage, that no one is condemned, that hell is an internal state, created right here, when we forget who we are. I couldn't speak, only cry, not out of sadness, but out of relief, because all the nights I'd feared the end now seemed distant, because all the questions that had haunted me since childhood had been answered without words, because now I knew there is no punishment, there is learning, there is no punishment, there is vibrational correction, there is no separation, there is oblivion, and return is inevitable. And at that moment, more than ever, I felt a mission blossoming within me, a spiritual responsibility, because knowing all this and keeping it to myself would be like locking a child in a dark room with the key in my pocket and pretending I didn't hear the screams. And that's why I'm telling you this, because maybe you too carry this old fear. Maybe you too lost someone and wondered where they went. Maybe you feared death itself. Maybe you believe there's something unforgivable within you. And I tell you with everything I am, there isn't. You are light in human form. You are a spark of the Creator playing this game of forgetting and remembering. You are not here by chance, and nothing you have experienced has been in vain. It was all experience. It was all preparation, and now you're reading this, hearing this, feeling this. This is a sign. This is a call. That's why I want to invite you to do something now, very simple but powerful. Comment below what you feel. You can write, "I am not afraid of death," or "I am consciousness in transition," or just, "I remember who I am." These words are not just for me. They are for you, for your soul, for your frequency. If this video touched you in any way, please leave a like. It's more than a click. It's a pulse. It's you saying to the field, I received, I resonate, I align. And if you want to continue this journey with me, subscribe. Because like I said, there's still more to come. The being told me about an activation, something that will happen, en masse. And it's much closer than you think. The word activation vibrated within me for hours. More than a word, it felt like a code. An ancient sound my body recognized, even if my mind didn't immediately grasp it. After that experience of crossing the border between life and death, or rather, between dimension and consciousness, I was no longer the same. But the being knew something was still missing. One last piece. One final adjustment. And that was what it gave me on that silent night when the world seemed suspended between one breath and the next. He called me out of the shed. The moon was full, but there was something different in the sky. A blue-gold glow streaked across the horizon as if a second dawn were breaking. It was subtle, but constant. The being pointed with its gaze. It's starting. I didn't ask what. I just felt it. Because there, at that frequency, the answer came before the question. It was the activation of collective consciousness. Something that was already written, but not as destiny. As possibility. A turning point. A point of return. A kind of vibrational portal that would open first within ... and then without. And it was then that he showed me the most intense image of all. On Earth. But not just as a physical planet. It was enveloped in a kind of living network, like a spiraling electromagnetic field, with threads of light connecting every human being. Every thought, every emotion. It was as if everything were interconnected, but we'd never realized it. The network pulsed. In some places strongly, in others almost dimly. And as people awakened, certain nodes in the network began to glow brighter. And when two or more awakened together, that part of the network gained power. And then more people around began to be affected by it. It was like a virus of light, a vibrational contagion. This is the true body of Christ, he said. Not a church, not a doctrine, but a living network of consciousnesses awakening to their divinity. It touched me in a way no sermon, no service, no book ever had. Because I understood. I saw. It wasn't metaphorical, it was literal. Every emotion I felt, every thought, every word I released into the world resonated in the network and affected everything around it. And then he showed me what happens when many of these consciousnesses align at the same time. It was like a crack in the field. Reconfiguration. Reality began to respond immediately. Miracles became normal. Synchronicities ceased to be exceptional. Illnesses disappeared. People met without ever having seen each other before. Dreams became messages. And nature itself responded. Trees blooming out of season, animals approaching without fear, children being born with intuitive gifts that had previously been dismissed as imagination. Activation isn't something that will come from outside, he explained. It begins when enough humans simultaneously feel that they are already all they seek. I tried to sue. But how will this happen? How will so many people remember at the same time? He looked at me tenderly, with pain or with love. The choice is always collective, and you have already begun the process. At that moment, an image flashed through my mind. A scene of chaos, Cities collapsing, systems failing, people lost, afraid, running aimlessly, and at the same time small groups, few, but steadfast, silently amidst the chaos, their eyes closed and their hearts open. They held the frequency, they didn't react, they emanated, they anchored, and that's when I understood chaos doesn't come to punish, it comes to cleanse, to accelerate, to push those who refuse to awaken through love, to awaken through pain. But these groups, these points of light, were the guardians of the field. They were living reminders of what was still possible. They didn't try to convince anyone, they vibrated, and whoever was ready ... would step forward. You will be one of those points, the being said, but not with words, with presence. And those words resonated deeply with me, because once again he reminded me that awakening isn't about speaking beautifully, memorizing phrases, or appearing spiritual. It's about being. It's about sustaining the vibration of love even when everything around you is falling apart. It's about remembering the light when the whole world seems plunged into shadow, and that's what activation really is. Not an external, mystical event, but an internal, silent transition that spreads like wildfire when one soul recognizes another and says, without words, I see you. I am you. After that, he took me to the crystal one last time. But now it was no longer for me to ask, nor visualize, nor feel as if I already was. It was for me to be. He asked me to remain in absolute silence for 3 minutes, with the crystal in the center of my chest, with my eyes closed. And during those 3 minutes, something happened. I can't explain it precisely, but it was as if I had left my body and at the same time entered it for the first time. I felt every cell, every atom, every electron. I became the space between things. I became the sound before sound, the vibration that precedes form. And in that state I heard one last sentence, not from him, but from the source itself. Now you are a transmitter. And then I understood the purpose of my pain, the reason for my story, the meaning of suffering. All of this hadn't been punishment. It had been preparation, because only those who pass through darkness can sustain the light without being dazzled. Now I want to ask you something, with all the sincerity of my being. Do you feel like you are one of those points? Do you feel that despite everything you've been through, there's still something bigger calling you? Have you ever had that shiver of nothingness? Have you ever dreamed of places that don't exist here? Have you ever felt that your mission is greater than this repetitive daily routine? If so, comment below. But comment as if you were leaving a signal to the universe. You can write, I am a point of light, or I sustain the frequency, or simply, I'm ready. These phrases activate. They generate an echo. They open paths. And if this part of the journey touched you, leave a like. This helps the video reach more people who, like you, are waking up, sometimes in silence, sometimes in fear, but still, waking up. And if you want to continue with me, sign up now, because what happened after that, ... wasn't about me anymore. It was about all of us. The being showed me what is about to happen on the entire planet, and he told me a phrase that still echoes in me every night. The sky will not descend. It is the earth that will ascend. The final night arrived without warning. There was no fuss, no sky phenomena, no flashing lights in the warehouse. Everything seemed normal. The wind blew the same way. The smell of wet earth after rain was the same, but I knew. Something told me that would be the last time I would see him. And yet I wasn't sad, because there was no longer any separation. Because after everything he taught me, or rather reminded me of, I knew it wasn't about physical presence anymore. It was about connection, frequency, vibration. When I entered the warehouse, he was already there, standing in front of the ship, as if he'd been waiting for me forever. This time there were no words, just a look. That ancient, calm look, filled with a quiet compassion that pierced his chest. A look that said, you've come full circle. He held out his hand, and within it was the crystal that had been with me from the beginning. But now it glowed differently, more steadily, as if nourished by everything I had experienced, felt, and integrated. This is yours now, he said finally. But it's not an object. It's a reminder. I closed my fingers over it, and in that instant, I understood. It wasn't just about me. It never was. It was about everyone. About this tired humanity so close to awakening. About these souls who walk the streets with their eyes downcast, their shoulders hunched, unaware that they carry stars within their chests. It was about you. Yes, you who are listening, reading, feeling every word of this story. You who perhaps were drawn in by curiosity, and were surprised by a truth that had always been silent within you. You who perhaps arrived here hurt, confused, full of doubts, and now you are feeling something different. Maybe you can't name it, maybe you can't explain it. But if you're feeling it, then it's already started, because awakening is not an event. It's a process, and just by you staying this far, something has already changed. The ship began to emit a soft light, almost like a whisper, and I knew it was time. But before he left one last message, not with words, but with vibration, with intention. And she said something like this: keep going, don't stop, share, live, remind others who they are, with your presence, with your courage, with your faith. And when you feel afraid, remember we are with you. We always have been. And then he was gone. Simple as that. The ship disappeared like a drop of light being absorbed by the air. The shed fell silent, but the whole world seemed more alive in that moment. I left there feeling a peace that cannot be explained, the kind of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances, that doesn't depend on answers. A peace that simply is, because now I knew I was aligned with something greater, something that came from within, that connected me to everything. And now, alone, looking at the stars, I understood the true meaning of it all. Jesus did not come to create a religion. He came to remind us who we are. And now, the mission is ours. Now the call is upon us, not to repeat, but to manifest, not to follow, but to be perfect. You don't need to have answers for everything, you just need to remember and choose every day to vibrate like someone who knows that life doesn't happen against you, but through you. If you've made it this far with me, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not as someone speaking from a pulpit, but as someone walking beside you. Thank you for trusting. Thank you for making sense. Thank you for allowing this story to trigger something in you. And if you activated it, leave a word in the comments that represents you at this moment. It could be liberation, it may be true, it could be faith, or just, I remember. These comments aren't just engagement, they are frequency anchors. They are points of light in this invisible field that unites us. And if this journey touched something deep inside you, leave a like. It helps this message reach those who need it most. Those who are asleep but about to awaken. And if you haven't signed up yet, sign up now. Because that was just one part, there's a lot more coming. The next video is there on the screen now. Click on it, sit down, let your soul guide you. Because as the being told me last night, it's not the end. It's the beginning of remembrance. See you there. Always.